Well, Newt Gingrich is joining our coverage now, Fox News political analyst and former Speaker of the House. Mr. Speaker, you've been with us, listening, watching. Speaker of the House Mike Johnson's fate hangs in the balance. Your thoughts, as he sounded very optimistic heading into this, saying, quote, I think we get it done on the first round. I'm certainly hopeful for that. He said, but we've got to stick together. Will Republicans stick together in this moment?
Johnson.
Well, if I had to guess, I think they'll stick together, except for Massey, who is off on his own planet. But I think that, virtually everybody understands if President Trump is going to have any chance of being effective, he's got to be able to get things through the House. And I think what Karl Rove just said is essentially right. My guess is there will be 2 reconciliation bills. We did that when I was Speaker in 1997, so you can do 2. One will come very early and basically be the border and a few other things. The other will come, I hope, before the 4th of July. I recognize the challenges of writing a tax bill, but for the purpose of the 2026 election, the Republicans have a desperate need to get the economy growing fast enough that they'll be rewarded rather than punished in the off year. So there's a lot of things hanging in the balance. Every vote is going to be close. But remember, in the House, if you can find a 1-vote majority, that's all you need. It's not like the Senate. There's no filibuster. 1 vote, and Nancy Pelosi showed with a 4-vote majority that she could ram through all sorts of stuff. Now, Republicans are harder to manage and harder to lead. They're much more independent than Democrats. And I have to say, I can't imagine doing Speaker Johnson's job. I was a reasonably effective speaker in a different time and with a different majority. What he does every day is like Job. I mean, he listens and he listens and he listens. And he's dealing with a group of contrarians who, if you said, I agree with you totally, they'd say, well, let me tell you this other thing I want. And I think you at some point have to draw a line and say, look, you're either with Donald Trump or you're not. There's not a Massey majority. There's a Trump majority. The American people didn't endorse Massey. They endorsed Trump. And I think the conference has to understand that if they're going to be successful, they have to be a team. This is a team sport. And if you're not going to be a team, you're not going to succeed.
Mr. Speaker, it's Brett. I think you're selling yourself short on your speakership, but I will say that this team is not sticking together right now. Ralph Norman has voted for Jim Jordan. That's the number 2 on the screen there. So now you have Thomas Massey and Ralph Norman, and that would make, if they don't change those votes before the end of this vote, and the others don't weigh in, it's still, you can't lose these 2, and it would mean for a second ballot here, which is maybe why you see Speaker Johnson looking a little nervous there, sitting next to Steve Scalise. What does that tell you, big picture here? You mentioned the Democrats and Nancy Pelosi, who we saw Hakeem Jeffries go across the aisle and hug when her name was listed. She managed to push a lot through with a 4-seat majority, but it is tougher to herd the cats with Republicans.
Yeah, and what you have here, I used to joke that Teddy Kennedy would get awake in the morning and say the answer is more money. What's the question? You have a handful of Republicans who get awake every morning and say, I'm voting no. What's the issue? And they're contrarians. And you can't have a contrarian caucus with a very, very narrow margin. You were kind about my speakership, but I had a much bigger majority. And we had a country which was decisive. Now, the question I'd ask of both Norman and Massey is, so what's part 2? Other than helping Hakeem Jeffries and hurting Donald Trump, what do you think you're accomplishing? Because I don't see what the second act is. And they might feel good and get some media, be able to raise some money, but they're doing it at the cost of the country. The country gave a mandate not to Massey. It didn't give a mandate to anybody else except Donald Trump. And I think for them to undermine this on the opening day is almost suicidally stupid. And I can't explain it except that over the years, and Carl watched all this and lived with it in the Bush White House, over the years there's been a group in the party who've grown more and more hostile, more and more self-righteous. Dave Winston just wrote a great piece today about the history. I lasted 4 years, and even though we'd balanced the budget, reformed welfare, cut taxes, by the end of it, there was a hardcore group of about 18 that were just tired. John Boehner won a huge majority, bigger than I did, and after a while they got tired. Paul Ryan got so disgusted he left. The guy who actually created the current majority, Kevin McCarthy, was in a constant running war with about 8 or 10 members. Then this small group is congealed into a very hostile, very destructive group. Fine, and if you're the opposition party, but astonishingly stupid if you're the governing party. And somehow Trump and others, J.D. Vance may have a big job cut out from here. They've got to sit these guys down and explain to them. And if that means that Trump goes and holds rallies in every one of their districts and mounts a tremendous effort to replace them, whatever it takes, you cannot have a hostile, contrarian, negative group if you're going to try to govern.
Just want to start to, Brett, if we could bring our viewers through what is happening right now, as it has been looking more and more likely that it appears Mike Johnson would be falling short. Although we do caution, even if there are 2 votes against Johnson by name, we can't.
Now 3.
There's 3. Okay, that just came in. So we can't definitively say this is going to a second ballot yet. However, it's starting to look as if he is falling short, and they will go back to these members after this vote tally happens.
Right, and it does not matter now if it holds. And these 3, there's 1 vote for Jordan, 1 vote for Emmer, and 1 vote for Donalds now,
yeah.
Against him by name. It wasn't Donalds who voted that way. It was Self, I believe, who voted for Donalds for Speaker. But 3 against him by name.
Yep.
This is going to a second ballot.
Yeah.
He will fall short. And we are getting to, the end of the roll call here. So unless they switch their votes, we are going to see a second ballot, which, if we remember back to 2023, how painful this process was for Republicans to go through, Mr. Speaker. I mean, there were 4 days for these votes.
Look, I use this language very deliberately. These people are insanely destructive. What is round 2 going to be? So you have one guy gets 186 votes right now. Another guy gets 3. Actually, 3 people get 1 each. So what's round 2 going to be like? The same 3 guys are going to hold out, and they're going to hold out forever? I mean, it's certainly their constitutional right. They're independently elected. But let's be clear. This is a stunningly stupid, suicidal strategy, which only weakens the Republican Party, weakens President Trump, makes it harder to fix America. And I don't know what it is. These guys need psychologists. I mean, I don't know what they think they're accomplishing in the real world except to make a spectacle out of this thing. Now, I hope that at least 2 of them will switch. I think Massey's probably utterly, totally hopeless. He's sufficiently certain of his moral rights and his brilliant insights that I don't think he'll move under any circumstance. But I would hope the other 2 would realize that they're going to look like idiots. It's not going to change. I mean, the party's not going to go, oh, gee, 214 of us were right, or 215 of us were right, but you 3, you've convinced us on the second ballot. Let's do something else. I've been at this business, as you know, a long time. This is as really, literally, as self-destructive as I've ever seen a political party be, and it's down to a handful of people. Everyone else is trying to get it to work. Everyone. Moderate, conservative, Freedom Caucus, you name it. They're all trying to get it to work, except for a very tiny handful.
All right, so Mr. Speaker, considering the way this is going right now, with the last that we heard from Keith Self voting for Byron Donalds for Speaker, making him the 3rd Republican to vote for someone other than Mike Johnson, if it just doesn't go the way for Mike Johnson, what is this forecasting about the next couple of years?
Well, look, it's going to be tough. I mean, it's always going to be tough because the margin's too narrow in the House, and it's always going to take. The only way President Trump can govern successfully at home is to arouse the American people the way Reagan did, and frankly, the way we did with the contract with America. I mean, when we passed welfare reform, we got half the Democrats to vote with us because it was so popular. when we passed 4 consecutive balanced budgets. We got Democratic votes because it was so popular. When Reagan passed his big tax cut, he got 47 Democratic votes because it was so popular. So Trump will have to go to the country and find a way to so arouse citizens that citizens put so much pressure on moderate Democrats who are up for election next year that he can build a bipartisan coalition on his terms for his issues. That's the only possible way to manage a House that's this narrowly divided, particularly when you have a handful of people who would rather help the Democrats than help the Republicans.